The figure of Keanu Reeves has always sparked fascination. Amid decades of a career that defied trends and the usual collapses of fame, he has maintained an almost static presence in time. His face, practically unchanged since the 90s, has fueled a wave of theories, memes, and questions that go beyond mere genetics. Time doesn't seem to apply to him the same way it does to the rest of the world. What was once just a joke has taken on darker and more curious contours as details, previously ignored, began to emerge with more force. Ancient portraits with identical features, role choices that flirt with concepts like resurrection and transcendence, and a lifestyle that borders on ritualistic isolation. Everything about Keanu seems to point to something beyond the ordinary. The public sees him as humble, quiet, almost monastic, but is this behavior just an expression of his personality, or part of something much deeper, ancestral, and carefully concealed? After all, why doesn't Keanu Reeves age? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I want to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference for YouTube to deliver the videos to more people, and for me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get to the video. Have you ever looked at two images and felt like something was too wrong to be a coincidence? That's exactly how I felt when I first saw the portrait of Paul Monet, a 19th century French actor, declared dead in 1922, whose face could easily be on a current Hollywood poster. The detail is that he doesn't look like Keanu Reeves. He is Keanu Reeves. The jawline, the shape of the eyes, even the expression, everything. The most disturbing part? Paul's body was never found. Officially, he died. But did he really? That wasn't the only case. There's another painting, even older, from the 16th century, by Parmigianino. It shows a young man whose features are so similar to Keanu's that it looks like a fake, except it's not. It's in a museum, documented, historically verified. The resemblance is unsettling. So I ask you, how many coincidences need to happen before they stop being coincidences? That's when I started pulling the thread. And the more I pulled, the more things showed up. There are entire forums dedicated to this, hundreds of people collecting old images with similar faces. Some are clearly forced, but others, there's no denying. It's as if Keanu's face has been crossing centuries, appearing in different eras with different names, but hardly changing at all. And no one seems eager to talk much about it. Curiously, Keanu himself has never denied it. When asked about the theory on a talk show, he just smiled and replied, "We are all energy." Sounds like a joke, right? But was it? Sometimes what seems like a joke is just a safe way to tell the truth without causing panic. And when you start seeing this pattern of vague answers, smiles, and deflections, it's hard not to suspect. Now think with me, if you were someone carrying a secret like this, that you've been alive for centuries, would you tell? Would you share it with anyone? Or would you keep the story under control, hiding behind roles, public images, carefully chosen scripts? Genealogy researchers have tried to trace Keanu's family tree. And guess what? There are gaps. His father, for example, disappeared from public life early on, and there's very little traceable information. Nothing incriminating, but definitely strange. Small gaps that, in a case like this, make all the difference. Because it's not just what is said, it's what is hidden. Another point that can't be ignored. Keanu was born in Beirut, a city deeply marked by esoteric traditions, mystical orders, and ancient knowledge. Coincidence? Maybe. But Lebanon was once home to some of the most secretive schools of the ancient world. Was he, from early on, even unknowingly, involved with something much greater than himself? And look how curious. These old images, these paintings, these visual proofs, they're not just anywhere. They're in restricted collections, hard to access, rarely in the public eye. It's as if someone doesn't want them to be easily seen. If it were just a coincidence, why hide it? I'm not saying here that he's literally immortal. But there is something out of the ordinary going on. And the portraits are like small clues forgotten by time, like echoes still resonating from a much larger story. Maybe he's been living among us for much longer than we imagine, and we're only now starting to notice. And what if Keanu Reeves is just the tip of the iceberg? What if there are others living parallel lives, changing identities, always present but never exposed? Could we be facing a phenomenon, or a revelation we've yet to understand? If you stop to think about it, Keanu Reeves doesn't choose ordinary roles. He doesn't play bankers, bakers, or family fathers in everyday plots. No, he chooses characters that transcend reality. Men who defy death, who return from the beyond, who fight invisible systems or become unreachable legends. And this doesn't happen by chance. The line that separates the actor from the character, in Keanu's case, seems increasingly thin. Let's talk about The Matrix, for example. Neo starts as an ordinary man, but soon discovers he's living in an illusion built to hide the truth about the world. He dies and comes back. He resurrects. He transcends physical reality. All of this happens amidst philosophical, existentialist, and even Gnostic themes. Neo's story is the classic journey of a chosen one, a being destined to awaken. Something very similar to ancient myths about eternal entities living among humans without being noticed. Now think of John Wick, a man who, after suffering a personal tragedy, returns to the criminal underworld, facing entire organizations alone, surviving lethal wounds, hunted by everyone, yet never defeated. He's a constant, almost mythological force. He doesn't age between films, doesn't change behavior. Always in control, always at the center of chaos, and always standing. Is there anything more symbolic than that? The curious thing is that these characters aren't just fictions written by creative screenwriters. They reflect, almost like mirrors, Keanu's public image. Silent, composed, unshakable. As if he were living on screen what he can't live openly outside of it. Or worse, as if he were subtly showing the world what he truly is. Are these scripts merely entertainment, or hidden messages disguised as fiction? And it doesn't stop there. In Constantine, Keanu plays a cursed man who roams between the world of the living and the dead, dealing with spiritual entities and fighting invisible forces. It's another role where death is not a real boundary. And once again, the narrative revolves around a character who carries an eternal burden. Why does this pattern repeat so often? Some might say it's just coincidence that Keanu has a physical type and screen presence that fits these roles. But let's be honest, Hollywood has hundreds of talented actors, yet only one of them consistently embodies such almost supernatural characters. And more, these roles appear at strategic moments in his career, as if guiding the public through a kind of gradual awakening. Film analysts have already noticed this. There's a trend in Keanu's films to explore what's called the archetypal journey of the immortal. It's a narrative structure that dates back to ancient mythology, from Gilgamesh to the Arthurian cycle, where a hero travels through eras, takes on different forms, and faces eternal trials. Is this intentional? Or is it because he knows this journey in a way no screenwriter could ever fully grasp? Now let's step off the screen and look behind the scenes. Several directors who've worked with Keanu report something peculiar. He rarely questions the script, never demands changes to lines or motivations. He understands the roles as if he already knows them, as if that story, even written by someone else, is part of his own memory. Ever thought about that? And if you watch old interviews, you'll notice a pattern. When he talks about his characters, he avoids over-explaining. He never delves into emotional details. He always describes the roles with a certain reverence, as if speaking about something greater than himself. A spiritual connection, perhaps? His presence in these films then starts to seem less like an artistic choice and more like a silent mission, as if he's trying to prepare the public for an idea that still can't be spoken aloud. A truth that's been slowly told, disguised as fiction. What are these films really telling us? Are they just reflections of our fascination with immortal themes, or signs that the truth is already among us, and has chosen cinema as the stage to reveal itself, little by little? When we think of a Hollywood star, the image that comes to mind is one of parties, active social media, interviews, red carpets. But Keanu Reeves seems to have taken the opposite path. And this didn't start recently. Since the beginning of his career, he showed a kind of silent refusal toward exposure. But as the years went by, this behavior became even more evident, and perhaps more revealing. Keanu doesn't have social media. No Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter. In an era where even cinematographers have verified profiles, that says a lot. In interviews, he said that real life is more interesting than virtual life. It sounds like a simple, even beautiful answer. But when we look more closely, it goes beyond a personal choice. It's a form of control, of isolation, as if he knows that being too connected to the world would somehow be dangerous for him. And this distance isn't limited to the internet. Keanu rarely gives long interviews. And when he does, he chooses controlled environments, predictable questions. He avoids talking about himself, doesn't comment on politics, doesn't opine on cultural trends, leaves no room for controversy. He lives as if in a constant state of neutrality. Does that sound like the typical behavior of a globally famous actor? His life off camera is equally discreet. He rides the subway, frequents regular coffee shops, avoids luxury even with a fortune estimated at over $300 million. He's been seen numerous times anonymously donating money, buying food for homeless people, and walking the city streets without security. Is that humility? Certainly, but it can also be seen as a kind of discipline. A silent code he follows rigorously. Many have compared this lifestyle to that of monks. And it's no coincidence. Keanu practices meditation, studies philosophical and religious texts, and avoids any behavior that could be seen as vanity. In a 2003 interview, he said, "Fame is not who I am. It's just a shadow." A poetic comment, of course, but what if it's literal? What if he lives this way because he needs to keep that shadow under control? In the tradition of certain ancient orders, there's a concept known as external purification. The idea that to maintain a spiritual essence intact, one must detach from excess, public attention, and the noise of the world. Keanu fits this perfectly. It's as if he's following a continuous ritual of detachment, not as an aesthetic choice, but as a vital necessity. And here comes a delicate point. He has never been involved in scandals. No serious incidents, no exposed personal controversies, no backstage conflicts. It's as if his presence is shielded, as if there's an invisible barrier between him and the chaos of the entertainment world. Have you ever wondered why? Some say he's simply private, but that explanation starts to seem shallow when we see that, even when presented with major opportunities for exposure, he chooses silence. Like with the Oscars, nominated, praised, acclaimed, and he never shows up. Never seeks recognition. Never demands the spotlight, as if he knows it would be dangerous, or perhaps unnecessary. This behavior generates a strange kind of admiration. People don't follow him for scandals, but out of respect. They feel there's something true about him, something rare. But at the same time, that truth feels incomplete, as if there's something he can never say. Something that doesn't fit into words, but reveals itself in how he lives, walks, looks. As if there were a consciousness behind everything, guiding each step, each silence. In the end, this discreet, almost ritualistic life seems far less like a coincidence and much more like a pattern. A programmed routine. A constant practice of control, not only over his image, but over time. Over memory. Over what can and cannot be revealed. Is Keanu merely protecting himself from the world, or keeping the world away from a truth that cannot be exposed? There's something curious that happens when Keanu Reeves speaks in public. It's not just his calm tone of voice or his always composed posture. It's what he doesn't say. The way he skirts around certain topics, how he avoids deep explanations about himself. In every interview, no matter how casual, there's a pattern. And when we start observing that pattern closely, it stops feeling spontaneous and starts to feel rehearsed. In a conversation with host Jimmy Kimmel, for example, Keanu was asked about death, and his response was unexpected. "The people who love us will miss us." That's it. A phrase that sounds nice, but doesn't actually answer anything directly. It dodges the question and offers only an emotional image. And here comes the question. Why does someone with so much depth always avoid delving into topics involving spirituality or existential matters? This pattern appears again in an old interview with Rolling Stone magazine, where he was asked about his religious beliefs. He answered that he believes in a universal energy. He didn't mention any faith, any dogma. Just energy. It might sound like an artsy celebrity response, but when it's repeated over decades, with the same vocabulary, it starts to feel like something learned, something guarded. In occultist traditions, especially in Hermetic schools, this idea of universal energy is central. It is believed that everything in existence is made of vibration, and that mastery over these vibrations allows one to transcend time and matter. This kind of language often appears disguised in the speech of people connected to esotericism. So when Keanu insists on terms like light, energy, balance, is he just being poetic, or is he transmitting something in code? Another intriguing point is the absence of emotion in his most delicate statements. Keanu has gone through profound personal losses. His best friend, River Phoenix, died in his arms. His daughter was stillborn. Shortly after, he lost his partner in a car accident. And yet, when speaking about these moments, he remains absolutely composed, as if protected from within, as if he lives apart from common human reactions. This extreme self-control is a hallmark of certain occult orders. Some of them teach their adepts to silence external emotions to keep the mind clear and the essence protected. Do you think this is just a coincidence in Keanu's behavior? Or could we be witnessing, without realizing it, the public manifestation of a training that dates back to very ancient traditions? And it doesn't stop there. On several occasions, Keanu refers to reality as something unstable. In a conversation about the Matrix, he said, "Maybe everything is code, and we're not ready to see it." Statements like this fit perfectly within Gnostic thought, which claims that the world is an illusion, a prison for consciousness. Is he merely reflecting on the movie, or speaking of something he truly believes or lives? His body language also stands out. Whenever the topic of spirituality comes up, he folds his hands, changes his posture, and lowers his voice. That's not just nervousness. It's conditioned behavior, like someone who knows they're approaching a delicate boundary, like someone who has learned that there are things that cannot be said outright, and this extends to silence. Keanu is known for being one of the few actors who accepts long moments without speaking during interviews. He doesn't fill the space with empty phrases. He simply observes. And anyone who studies occult techniques knows, silence is a tool. It protects, it contains, it preserves what cannot yet be revealed. These between-the-lines cues, these almost invisible details, form a language of their own. A language made of evasions, pauses, ambiguous words. And when we learn to read this code, we discover that Keanu isn't hiding the truth. He's telling it, in the only way he can. What would happen if he spoke openly? Is he merely an actor protecting his privacy, or someone carrying knowledge that must be kept hidden for a reason we don't yet understand? In every major theory, there's a moment when the fragments align. And in the case of Keanu Reeves, that moment might lie in a little discussed but deeply rooted idea present in many ancient cultures: the existence of a secret lineage of individuals who defy time. They are known as social immortals, people who not only live beyond normal expectations, but who maintain a discreet and constant presence throughout history, as if following a silent mission. This theory began gaining traction when alternative scholars noticed recurring behavioral patterns among public figures from different eras. People who appeared at key historical moments with similar physical features, neutral postures, unclear birth records, and a reserved, almost ritualistic demeanor. Sound familiar? The concept of social immortals isn't new. Hermetic texts and records from secret societies mention the existence of guardians of time, individuals tasked with protecting ancient knowledge and preventing certain information from being lost or falling into the wrong hands. These guardians would live among us, changing names, identities, and functions as the ages pass, always maintaining a discreet appearance and a near-monastic routine. What if Keanu were one of them? Now think, he avoids exposure, doesn't age as expected, speaks of universal energy, chooses roles that represent transcendence, and maintains such a controlled public routine that it borders on the discipline of initiatic orders. It's not an exaggeration to say that Keanu fits every point of this theory. The question remains, is this just a lifestyle, or part of something much greater? Some researchers point to the idea that these immortals must follow spiritual maintenance rituals. We're not talking about witchcraft or fiction here, but real practices: deep meditation, fasting, periodic isolation, extreme emotional control. These are techniques aimed at slowing the aging process by manipulating the relationship between consciousness and matter. Sound abstract? These practices are backed by ancient traditions from Egypt, India, the Middle East, and even Greece. The idea is that time doesn't affect everyone equally. Under certain conditions, according to these doctrines, it's possible to slow the soul, and with it, the body. It's not about stopping time, but stepping out of its main flow. And here's the most curious part. Keanu has made statements saying that time is not linear, and that reality depends on perception. Offhand remarks, perhaps overlooked, but they make far more sense through this lens. And how could such a theory persist for so long without being exposed? Simple, because those involved in it live at the edge of public perception. They don't stand out through scandal, but through their consistent, subtle, almost invisible presence. People like Keanu aren't just actors. They're cultural anchor points. Figures who, without being identified, help maintain the balance behind what we call ordinary reality. There are curious records that support this idea. For instance, Keanu has disappeared from the public eye for entire years. No explanation, no scandal. And when he reappears, he looks exactly the same, as if he had simply paused, not just his career, but his public existence. And this kind of calculated absence is also typical of the preservation practices of the most secret of orders. And what if this order isn't something institutional like a cult or organization, but rather a collective of individuals who share a silent pact? A code that requires no temples, only actions. A commitment to silence, observation, and balance of the unknown. Is Keanu acting alone, or part of a larger network that stretches across centuries? What stands out the most is that, despite all the mystery, Keanu inspires trust. And that may not be an accident. If he is part of something ancient, perhaps that calm and peaceful presence is precisely the role he needs to play, not on screen, but in history. If these immortals truly exist, how many more walk among us living discreetly, using entertainment, art, or even science as a way to keep their mission alive? There's something about Keanu Reeves that you notice before he even says a word. The gaze. A look that seems to pierce through the scene, that doesn't react hastily, that rarely blinks. At first glance, it might seem like just a characteristic of the actor. But if you watch closely, you'll start to notice that this pattern repeats with an almost unsettling precision. In action scenes, dramatic moments, or even in the most relaxed interviews, Keanu keeps his eyes open in a constant, intense way. He doesn't look away, doesn't easily break eye contact. Some body language analyses label this as extreme focus. But it's more than that. It's as if he's observing the world from a place we can't reach. Have you noticed? This behavior caught the attention of nonverbal communication experts. In 2019, a group of hypnologists and microexpression analysts discussed Keanu's fixed gaze phenomenon on an international podcast. They said his facial expression is so controlled it seems trained. That's not common, not even among actors. Emotional control is expected, but ocular control at this level is not normal. What's even more curious is that this same trait appears in the characters he plays. Neo, for example, faces the machines with an almost mystical serenity. John Wick walks through explosions and gunfire without ever seeming emotionally affected. And that type of gaze, direct, motionless, unshakable, carries an ancient symbolic power. In esoteric tradition, the gaze is seen as an extension of consciousness. Some doctrines believe that those who master the gaze can dominate the energy of a space. That's why, in many ancient rituals, the eye was used as a symbol of protection, control, and spiritual power. Ever heard of the all-seeing eye? Maybe Keanu doesn't use it as a symbol, but as a practice. There's a little-known term called conscious fixation. It's used in studies of advanced meditation, hypnosis, and mental self-control. The technique involves keeping the gaze steady as a way to anchor the mind in the absolute present. And guess what? This technique appears in Buddhist, Sufi, and Hermetic practices. It's not something you learn on a film set. It's something you train for years. Even more intriguing, there are behind-the-scenes videos where Keanu is silent, just observing the environment. Others are talking, laughing, moving around, and he remains still, eyes fixed, as if absorbing everything. As if he sees more than what's being shown. Not like someone who's distracted, but like someone who's too alert. And what about the audience? Many people report that when they look into Keanu's eyes, whether in person or through the screen, they feel a strange sensation of calm and detachment from time. Sounds like an exaggeration, right? But when many say the same thing, in different contexts, it's worth paying attention. Why do so many people feel they lose track of time when looking at him? It's almost as if his gaze is a mirror. It doesn't just reflect what's in front of him, but something deeper. Something that unsettles, that forces the observer to ask, what is he seeing that I can't? Because deep down, that's the impression it leaves, that he's looking beyond the scene, beyond the person, maybe beyond this reality. And that leads us back to the old question, did Keanu learn this as an actor, or is it simply part of who, or what, he truly is? A type of consciousness hiding beneath a human appearance, using the gaze as a reading tool, a bridge between the visible and the invisible? And what if what hypnotizes us about him isn't just talent or presence, but a remnant of something our minds recognize, even without understanding it? None of this was a definitive statement. No line here tried to prove that Keanu Reeves is an immortal being, But when you connect the traces, the choices, the silences, and the symbols, an image begins to emerge. An image that doesn't fit conventional explanations. Perhaps we are witnessing someone who lives on the edge of time. Or perhaps we're simply recognizing the reflection of something far older than him, something that dwells in myths, in eyes, and in the silence between words. This story is just one piece, and one day, maybe you'll see the whole puzzle. If this made you think too, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.